Hi there, welcome to the Velliðan vlogcast. I have my good friend Liz here, and Liz is a jack of many trades. And in particular, what we're going to talk about today is yoga and Pilates, because she does both.
I do both.
Yes, tell us about you, Liz.
All right, about me. Well, I started doing Pilates, years ago, and it was with you.
Yeah, I was thinking about that the other day, and we actually met. We moved to this space in 2011.
Yep.
So it was like 2008 or 9.
I would say 2008 or 9 because I back then I was training for triathlons, right? Doing all this heavy training, and I ended up taking a fall and doing a little bit of damage to my back. And as I was recovering, I found Pilates, and I found the Pilates room. Back then when you were in a Pilates room down at Island, the Island Health and Fitness, and I took classes with you. And I craved Pilates, right? It's good stuff. And it was making me feel stronger. I learned a lot about my body, a lot of awareness of different muscles and how they support my body when I move. And I got really inspired, and in 2011, when you moved here, it was probably 2012, I decided that I wanted to teach that. I wanted to be able to give that to people. So I took yours and your men's training and mat Pilates, and worked with a friend and I, Sheila and I took the class. Yeah. And I think it took us about a year. It's an amazing training.
It's a process.
It is a process, but I think that doing it quicker or sooner for me wouldn't make sense, right? Mm-hmm. Was able to take it all in because it's this very methodical process, and it allows you to learn both all of the material and then experience it in your body and experience it as you watch other people do it. So it was a wonderful experience. And
I'm glad.
Yes, a little plug for your teacher training. So from there, I taught Pilates for a long time. I taught TRX, I taught spinning, all kinds of different fitness classes. And while I was doing all of my training for these triathlons, I began to find that I needed a little something more for my body to stretch and but still work on some strength. And then I found yoga, right? And at that same time, I was working. I was in charge of a community organization. I was the director at the youth bureau. I had an ill spouse at home. I was doing a lot of caretaking. And so yoga became a place where I could go to and continue to work really hard and get my physical workout, because back then that's what it was all about. Mm-hmm. But I began to realize after I did that there were these other changes happening in me, right? Taking that time to be on my mat and not worry about everything else that was going on allowed me the time to focus inward. Mm-hmm. And that feeling follows you off the mat, right? And you begin to feel this sense of calm. And as your body learns about that, you want to go back for more, mm-hmm. right? So the same way that I craved Pilates, I also craved yoga. And so I practiced yoga for, I don't know how many years, but for a good long time while I was continuing to do all of my other activities and teach Pilates. And then, let's see, in 2024? So probably in 2022 or 2023, I decided it was time to take a 200-hour yoga teacher training. My world opened up, I had time, it made sense to explore it more deeply. And so I signed up for the Mighty Yoga teacher training, 200-hour teacher training locally. Mm-hmm. And I took that. And that was also a wonderful experience. And I'm teaching yoga in lots of different places with lots of different ages and different populations, and it's wonderful, right?
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing to see how your personal practice can evolve into something that you share with others, and you sometimes you don't feel changes as profoundly in your body because you live in it, but you can see other people's changes, and it's so satisfying.
It is. It's very rewarding to be able to share that with people. I've been teaching a class up at Kendall, which is a assisted living place for older adults, and one of my participants, she said, "Oh, this is the highlight of my week. I crave yoga."
That's so great.
Right. And I'm like, I get that feeling. I get that I crave yoga feeling because I've had that feeling.
Yeah.
And so it was pretty magical to hear her say that. And then it
That's
meant that
great.
much to her. So,
So just can you touch on just for a moment the differences? I want to talk about the differences in yoga and Pilates as a whole, but in terms of the training, is it a similar experience? Is it very different?
it is very different and a little bit similar. So the training or the modalities?
First the training.
Okay. So the training, I mean, if you were just looking at logistical similarities, right? The training in terms of hours, the initial hours, is probably about the same, roughly, right? Roughly speaking. What I found really nice is there's a strong emphasis on anatomy in the Pilates, and so I had all of that background, and there's also an emphasis on anatomy in the yoga teacher training, and that was just a nice complement to what I'd already learned.
It's a little easier.
Makes it a little easier. It reminds you, it brings things up, and you get to relearn things, and so that was a similarity. Learning the Pilates repertoire or exercises, right? Breaking them down piece by piece. That is similar to learning the various asanas, right? The different poses, yoga poses that you do. You break them down, you learn how to do them, and you learn how to teach them. And then, as I remember, in both Pilates and yoga, learning modifications for people, because individuals are coming to your class and everybody is different, right? Different bodies, different abilities, different focus. And so you want to be able to bring, whether it's Pilates exercises or the asanas, you want to bring it to individuals in a way that that makes it accessible to them, right? So you have to learn that. So I would say that is similar.
So it's a similar experience
Overall.
That's in general.
Yes. I would say the one thing that, studying the history and philosophy of yoga, that's different from Pilates.
Yeah.
I think just because yoga goes back 5,000 years. And
it's got quite a history.
It has quite a history. And Pilates has its history.
It's a page long.
Right? But it's from 1926, right?
Yeah.
Where you're looking at yoga 5,000 years ago.
Yeah.
And, it wasn't even written down, until many years later. And so there just comes with so much more philosophy, history, spirituality with the yoga. So in that sense, I would say the training part is different. And one similarity, like both Pilates and yoga, it's not a one and done deal, right? So you learn how to teach it, how to feel it, and then you continue your learning, right? You continue to evolve as a teacher. Lifelong, right? So it's a lifelong learning piece, which I love. And now I'm finding that my Pilates, my traction to Pilates, my Pilates brain with how you strengthen and lengthen your muscles is now coming into some of the work I'm doing in yoga to bring people not only this a way to feel good in their body physically, emotionally, and mentally, but to get strong, right?
Yeah.
To get strong and
Yeah.
be strong, flexible, and mobile for life, right?
Yeah.
I'll get older.
So in my last podcast, it was an introduction to what Pilates is, and I talked about the fact that people come to us oftentimes and say, "Oh, Pilates, it's like yoga."
Yeah.
And it's not.
Right.
I mean, it's maybe very specific similarities in, like, for example, a teaser and a boat pose are close. But can you explain the differences between Pilates and yoga, and how I know that you're kind of integrating them both
Yes.
oftentimes,
Yeah.
but maybe talk about the separation of them first, and then
Yeah.
how you integrate them.
Sure. So yes, they are definitely not the same. Yeah. So I'm like, oh my God, they're different. They're different in so many ways. So if you were to come to a yoga class, right, in 2024, right? So you will probably, your experience will be different depending on who your teacher is, who your studio is. There's different types of yoga. There's different ways to teach yoga. When I teach yoga, I start a class and I invite people to just arrive on their mat, right? Take a moment to breathe. Take a moment to set aside the busyness of their mind, to really bring their focus inward, right? And that's a big piece of yoga, is being able to bring your focus and your awareness in, right, into your own body. And that's how I start class, and that's how many teachers start class. And then your pranayama, your life force, which we interpret through our breathing. There's many different breath practices. So it's not unusual to focus on your breath and try different breathing patterns depending on the focus of your class. And then you move into moving through your poses or your asanas and linking your movement with your breath. A class will incorporate some sun salutations, which can be very specific, or there are modifications to them. And then you move through that piece to working on maybe arm balances or standing balances. And as you're working through all these movements, sometimes you're carrying a theme, right? A very, either it's a spiritual theme or a thoughtful theme of your focus. Where's your focus, right? Mm-hmm. Stay here. Where's your body? Notice your breath. Notice how the sensations you feel, right? Can you stay here a little longer? Mm-hmm. So working to bring the mind and body together. I feel like I'm rambling now.
Nope, it's all good.
Yeah. So that's a yoga class, right? Mm-hmm. And then as you move through your theme and your poses that relate to that theme, you begin to wind down your class offering, and that it ends with a shavasana, mm-hmm. right? Or a time to rest and relax, a time to give your nervous system the opportunity to really just take in all of the movement that you did and that you experienced, right? Mm-hmm. And it's usually between 4 to 7 minutes long, and it's a pretty amazing 4 to 7 minutes, right? Yeah. Like if you think about it, like how often do we just sort of sit and be for?
Not unless you're in a class where they tell you to do it,
right?
Most of the time,
right?
Yeah.
So that's a beautiful thing right then and there to bring people, right? That opportunity to just take that time to settle in. And then you seal your practice coming together at the end. Typically, I'll do it in a seated pose, invite people to come up, really take a moment to check in physically, emotionally, and mentally, right? Like what's different? Notice that. And then we breathe together, and then we together make the sound of Om, right? Which is a beautiful chant, a vibration that sounds through the room, and then we're done. And it's like, I mean, a lot of times I just feel like you can, yes, right? Like you can just sort of float out, right?
Yeah.
So, so that's the yoga class.
And the Pilates class.
The Pilates
You
class.
just get on the mat and work.
Yes. I mean, you come in for Pilates and you know that it's going to be a very physical, energetic practice, right? You know the repertoire of exercises, the Pilates series. And sure, sometimes in contemporary Pilates, you're adding in different things, you're tweaking things, based on new science today, right? Mm-hmm. But really your focus is your core, front, side, and back.
Yeah.
And you are going to work that in a Pilates class. And it moves a little bit more quickly. It moves, and you go through the exercises.
And it's not as fluid, right? I mean, I'm actually not a yogi, I want to say. But from what I have taken some classes, and from what I have observed, yoga seems to, you may go into a pose and hold it and experience it, but then there is a very fluid transition into the next thing.
Sometimes, yeah. And I think sometimes it depends on the type of yoga that you're going to.
Okay.
And I'm not trained in all of the different yogas. My training was based on vinyasa flow. Mm-hmm. So that flow, right, that transition, but more importantly, it's almost like an hour-long breath practice as you move, each movement to your breath, right? You're connecting. And even if you're in a pose and settling in for 3 breaths, you're basically, your goal is to try to keep that same rhythmic, constant, consistent breath. And then, yes, there's typically a transition into the next pose. And nowadays you'll see all kinds of things happening, just like you see all kinds of things happening in Pilates, right? Yeah. And then there's other yoga, yin yoga, which I don't know a lot about. I do know that in yin yoga, you move from one pose to the other, but you hold it for a significant time, like a couple of minutes. Yeah. You're in a pose, and I don't know if there's a specific way to transition, but then you move to another pose, right? So probably less of a flowy thing that I think a lot of people these days are associating it with. But there are just so many different kinds of yoga. Restorative yoga. There's Kundalini yoga, which works with energy and the chakras. And all I know now is there is so much more that I don't know, right? And I'm continue to learn. So I think that's different. And in the Pilates class, like I said, when I leave a Pilates class, right? When I come here for a Pilates class, I'll take Shamen's class. I know that I'm going to get a great comprehensive workout. I'm going to move my spine in all 6 directions. I'm going to feel my abs, and I'm going to get this little lift, right? This little lift, a boost of energy, like, I feel strong. I feel good. I feel tall. And so that's sort of the energy that I would leave from Pilates. And sometimes some of the same components are in a yoga class. Yes, you're going to move your spine and in all 6 directions as you go through the yoga. You may or may not go through different poses that give you that feeling of, I'm strong. But there is definitely something else that happens like throughout your whole body. I don't know what to call it. It's a physical, emotional response, right? And experience, right?
Yeah. What I have noticed, again, there are different types of yoga, and I have not worked with folks who have done all the kinds of yoga, but what I have found from the folks that I have worked with is that they find Pilates is a good support. Yoga is their thing,
Yeah.
but Pilates is a good way to support the
Yes.
practice.
Yes. And that is, so I teach a fusion class, a Pilates yoga fusion. And I just started teaching it this year, and it's continues to evolve. But what I tell people is you can take your concepts, your Pilates concepts, the feelings of the core, bring them with you into your yoga class to support your movement through the poses. For one, to support your body, to support your spine, but to get a little different experience, right?
Yeah.
To keep it a little interesting.
Yeah.
But that is one thing that I agree with people who say that. It definitely complements it.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
Let me look at my list of questions here. What are some misconceptions about Pilates and yoga that you often encounter? And those misconceptions can be misconceptions about the similarities or misconceptions just about the practices themselves.
Yeah.
Well, you said one actually is that when most people think about yoga, they think of the flowy yoga,
Right.
which I thought of, but
Yeah. Yeah, that's funny. This morning I taught a class, and the focus was on preparing and moving our bodies to prepare for this pose called Bakasana, or crow pose, right? It's you maybe remember doing it as a kid. It's almost like one of those tripod, similar to like a tripod headstand, right? So, but preparing the body, waking up the core, and it was a very energetic class. But it also incorporated some more of the flowy, right? The flowy pieces. But that could be a misconception, if somebody was new and they're like, oh, I'm going to yoga. And then here's this teacher saying, we're going to have a really energetic class today.
Yeah.
You might find some interesting things in your body and sensations that you haven't felt before as we prepare to go, It's not about the end pose, it's about the journey. And, so there's a lot of misconceptions there. I think, a lot of what I'm seeing in social media, and I kind of get lost in social media sometimes, is a lot of people are saying, oh, the Western world is really just focusing on the asana, right? On the physical practice of yoga. And people don't want to have the history of yoga be taken advantage of or forgotten. And so there's a lot of people pushing back and forth. So I'm just kind of observing right now.
Yeah.
Right.
On a tangent here.
Yeah.
So in the Pilates world, we have the fight. It's not a fight. It's a disagreement over whether we should keep things exactly like Joseph Pilates did or evolve.
Right.
And people have very strong feelings about that. And I imagine yoga is the same because it has such a huge history.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's in some respects it is spiritual. And so it's kind of, I could imagine that people it's kind of like I don't know.
So like how do you evolve a practice while still being respectful to its roots? Right? And honoring its roots, whether it was from 1926 with Joseph Pilates or 5,000 years ago with I don't know, people we don't even know yet. Like there's how do you honor all of that and bring the pieces of that, keep the pieces of that alive as the practices evolve to meet people where they are today and where they are now. And I don't, in my experience, I can't say it's like it's one thing. A lot of people say, oh yeah, Western yoga, all you do is you think it's about the physical aspects of the practice. And when I do the physical practice, I'm not just there doing the physical practice, right? Like there is this thing happening in my mind and in my body, and the amount of focus that is coming into the movement. It's an experience, and for me, it can be spiritual, right? And then the effects of that practice of spending that hour on the mat moving and then resting comes with me, you know, when I leave the mat and into my life. And so that's, you know, that's my interpretation of how it's evolved. And I think it evolves as you as an individual develop in across your lifespan, right? Like, yes, sure, I was that person there walked into the yoga room, I want to sweat, I want to work hard. But then all these other things started to happen, right? All these other feelings. I began to learn from teachers who talked about the 8 limbs of yoga and little pieces that applied to my life that I could carry with me. So then I was beginning to get the physical practice and some of the information and history, and that just seems like an okay way for something to evolve, right?
It does.
Like I don't think it has to be one or the other or everything, but I do think that as we evolve, honoring the roots, right? As you do that and learn more, and I saw that, you know, in Pilates as well. There is that. And I think I just saw it on a blog the other day, like, you know, do the classical Joseph Pilates repertoire, and you know, some of that you can add more to that to make it more robust, right? But yes, so there's different topics. Like this might be a tangent, but for a while I was seeing in the Pilates, you know, we talk about stabilizing, right? Neutral pelvis, stabilize, use obliques, don't let anything move. And then other people are like, oh, you have to let the pelvis move. Like the pelvis can move, you know, it's like, all right, so now what? You know, now what? And so just trying to figure that out.
And well, I think even as the practices evolve overall, we sure have evolved our practice here in the last 20 years. We're
absolutely
teaching so differently today than we did before. And it's because we learn more. And the longer the practice of yoga or Pilates, the longer that those practices are in our environment, the more opportunity they have to evolve. They can't stay the same.
Exactly, because we're learning. And so a little tangent, I walked in the studio and I looked around and I was thinking, oh, this is so cool, you know, some shaman is working with somebody on the table, and I think it was Janet or Monica. I think Monica was in there. She's working with somebody on the Cadillac, and someone else is working with somebody, and they're doing a different type of technique. And so yes, it's, you know, what we're providing individuals, it has grown, it's more varied, and what individuals are coming into studios wanting or needing has grown, and it's varied.
For sure.
You know, exactly. And I see that in both Pilates and in yoga, right?
So if you had to give advice to a newbie of Pilates or yoga, do you have general advice that you could provide, or do you have a thought about doing one versus the other first? Is there an order? Do you start them at the same time?
Oh, you definitely don't start them at the same time.
It's a lot.
It's a lot, right? Both of them are overwhelming, quite frankly, when you first do them. I can remember the Pilates, and you know, when I said it took a year, I took it with my buddy, and we studied and we learned our anatomy, and then we practiced and we took our time. So I guess take your time, right? Definitely don't do both at once. Take your time, choose one. I don't think it matters which one you choose. I think going where it feels right for you to explore makes sense because who knows where,
Right.
where you're at and what you want to get out of it and what you want to share, right? What you want to share with people. So choose just one. Don't rush. Know that it'll be overwhelming, but be okay with that, right? Like it sorts itself out. And I took Pilates, in 2011 or 2012 with you. And there are things just now in yoga that the anatomy pieces that I'm learning, and I'm going, oh, right? Ding. Yeah. So you have these aha moments.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, yeah, that's so cool. So it makes that learning so much more rich, right? Because I had that background and I could blend and mold them together. So ride through the overwhelming pieces and know that you have time to learn, right? You get the basic pieces so that you can go out and teach when you're done. And you won't ever be perfect, right?
So you're talking about teacher training.
Training.
So
yes.
if somebody was going to just start a practice for person, which is,
yes.
and that's good. That's good information.
Yeah.
If I was a new exerciser, or I just had never done yoga or fitness.
Yep.
What do you think about that?
I would say, try it all.
Okay. Yeah.
I would say, come to Velliðan, right?
Yeah.
There's lots of different classes, there's lots of different focuses, and see what feels right in your body.
See what sticks.
Try, so, and actually here's advice that I do tell people who are new to my classes. I say, try lots of different instructors,
Yeah.
right? So whether it's Pilates or yoga or spinning or whatever it is, try different instructors because you will hear different cues and different things from different instructors, and you'll get to have those aha moments like, oh, that's what she meant,
Yeah.
right? Somebody says it a different way and it connects a little bit more to you.
Yeah.
And you might just connect differently with different teachers.
That is great advice, actually.
Yeah. And that's okay.
Because you might take my class and hate it. That doesn't mean you're not going to love it with somebody else.
Right,
Yeah.
right. But we're all different, and we all bring, even though we're bringing you Pilates or yoga, anyone who teaches, you're getting that individual's personality, their approach, what really stuck out with them, and that is pretty interesting and kind of neat. So
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, Liz, thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
playing with us today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you'll have to do it again.
Okay.
All right.
Alright.
Thanks for joining us today.
Bye, folks.
Here's to finding joy in the journey and peace in the pauses. Make body, mind, and spirit wellness your lifelong adventure. Until our next chat on the Velliðan podcast, stay groovy and stay grounded.
I'll do peace too.